Hi, I'm Michael. I'm going to be covering Chapter 2, Module 2, and the concept that I'm going to be covering is going to be Tony Schwartz's resonance principle of communication. And the idea behind this concept is going to be the main principle is the resonance, which resonance is created by a person's emotional attachment to a specific incident or a specific memory. And so that emotional attachment to that memory is going to be what drives the persuasion in the process. So the idea is that in the book he covers a Budweiser ad, and basically his objective approach is that there is emotional attachment that a person feels with that type of persuasion, and once he feels that emotional attachment and finds in his mind of that memory, he's naturally persuaded to change his opinion, or that's the rhetoric behind it. So that's what I'm going to be covering today. So the experience that I'm going to be talking about that coincides with the resonance principle of communication is going to be a time when I contemplated dropping out of school. And so to give some context to the situation, I had been in school for a couple years now, was starting to get the hang of going to school. I hadn't not been working an extensive job, so I was capable of managing my time in a good way. Once I started to reach my late second year, early third year of college, I tried to take on a part-time job, and I began to work much longer hours. Time management wasn't great, so essentially that's when I contemplated changing my path of going directly into the workforce or staying in school. And so the way this relates to the theory is that my mom was actually the persuader. She was the one that used the rhetoric, and her idea was that she essentially drove the point home to me of, she had never been to school, my father had never been to school, grandparents, etc. First generation college student. I had the opportunity to better myself with a college degree, and my mom just basically really brought out those memories of growing up. My parents had to work longer hours, they had to work hard hours, and so having that emotional attachment to the idea of not having a completely secure job, not having the freedom to do what you want because you have to work long hours, is something that sort of created the resonance in me and persuaded me to search for better opportunities in higher education. So at the time I was a global affairs major. I thought I really enjoyed the way the world works, politics, etc., those types of things. I started to learn that I didn't. I started to pay attention less in class. I started to no longer care about the schoolwork. And so I just felt as though I had already changed my major like 2 or 3 times, so I felt as though there was no other option. So I started contemplating dropping out of school and going into the workforce. I could learn a skill or a trade. But then I had the discussion with my mother, and so understanding that idea of growing up, having that emotional attachment to many people in my life not having a college degree, and then just creating that resonance of I want to be the first, and I want to be the person who breaks the cycle of not getting a college degree and furthering myself is something that really drove the point home in terms of persuasion for me. So in conclusion, for the resonance principle of communication, essentially the idea is that people carry this emotional attachment with certain memories, and that emotional attachment creates this idea called resonance, which is what drives a person to make a certain decision. So in terms of persuasive speaking, persuasive rhetoric, if a person is emotionally attached to something and has a strong emotional attachment from some sort of event in their childhood, in their past, etc., this is going to drive them to act a certain way because they've already experienced that process and they can understand the repercussions of it. So if this is important because it's important in our everyday communications. So it's important in our instrumental needs, how we take care of others, how we work with others in the work field, etc. So if we don't understand where a person is coming from and why they hold certain values because of certain emotional attachments, then we can't seek to persuade them to want to work in a certain way or persuade them to act a certain way. So the idea is to understand that, and a good quote for this would just to be walk a mile in someone else's shoes. If you can put yourself in someone else's shoes and empathize about how they're reacting to a situation or what they're doing, then you can better understand how to communicate with them. So essentially that is the resonance principle of communication.